A struggling single mom took care of a sick old man, never expecting he's a DC millionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into this incredible story. The next morning, Emma woke up to the sound of her children playing in the living room. It was an ordinary morning, except that Jack was still in her apartment. He had slept soundly on the couch, and Emma had managed to get a few hours of rest herself. She had woken up early, as usual, to get the kids ready for daycare and prepare for another long day ahead. Her mind kept drifting back to the previous night. Jack's story had left her with a sense of unease, not because she doubted his words, but because she knew there was more to him than he was letting on. She couldn't put her finger on it, but something about him felt different. As Emma got the kids ready for their daycare, Jack sat quietly in the living room, sipping on the tea she had made for him. He didn't say much, but he watched her with a gentle, almost sorrowful look in his eyes. It wasn't the look of a homeless man. It was the look of someone who had once been part of a much bigger world, a world that was now lost to him. Emma couldn't help but wonder what that world had been like. She had grown up in a modest household, and her life had always been a struggle. She knew the value of hard work and the importance of family, but Jack was different. He didn't belong here, in this small, cramped apartment. He had the demeanor of someone who had once lived in luxury, and Emma could sense it. As she walked back and forth, getting the kids ready, she couldn't help but feel a sense of discomfort. She had invited him in out of kindness, but now she wasn't sure if she had done the right thing. Could she trust him? Was it safe to have him stay in her home? But then, Jack spoke up. "You don't have to worry about me, Emma," he said, his voice raspy from lack of use. "I'll leave soon, I promise." Emma stopped in her tracks, turning to face him. "Jack, you don't have to leave. I just want to make sure you're okay, but I need to know more. I need to understand why you're here, why you're alone." Jack's eyes seemed to soften, and for a moment, Emma thought she saw a flicker of vulnerability in him. But then it was gone, replaced by a familiar look of sadness. "I'm not used to people asking about me," he said quietly. "I've always been the one doing the asking. But now," he trailed off, not finishing the thought. Emma didn't push him further. Instead, she simply nodded, her mind racing. She didn't know why, but something inside her told her to trust him. Maybe it was his eyes, or maybe it was the fact that he had no one else to turn to. Whatever the reason, she couldn't let him go. As she packed the kids into the car for daycare, she made a decision. She would help him. She didn't know how, but she knew she had to. Later that day, as Emma worked her shift at the diner, her thoughts kept drifting back to Jack. She couldn't focus, couldn't shake the image of him sitting in her living room, looking lost and broken. Was he telling the truth, or was he hiding something? Her instincts told her that there was something more to his story, something he wasn't ready to reveal, but Emma didn't have time to dwell on it. Her shift was busy, as usual, and the tips were sparse. The weight of her own struggles, bills to pay, food to put on the table, and 2 kids to raise was enough to keep her distracted. But even as she worked, her mind kept returning to Jack. By the time her shift ended, the diner was quiet. As she was closing up, she received a call from an unknown number. It was Jack. "Emma," he said, his voice sounding urgent. "I need you to meet me." Emma felt a surge of anxiety. "Where are you?" she asked. "I'm at a park near your place. Please, I need to talk to you." Without thinking twice, Emma grabbed her coat and headed out. When she arrived at the park, she found Jack sitting on a bench, looking more out of place than ever. He looked up as she approached, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. "What's going on, Jack?" she asked, her heart racing. "I'm in trouble, Emma," he said, his voice shaky. "I can't stay here anymore. I don't know who else to turn to." He paused, his hands trembling as he clasped them together. "I'm not who you think I am." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" Jack took a deep breath, and for the first time, he seemed to gather his courage. "I've been lying to you. I'm not just some old man down on his luck. I'm a millionaire. I'm the CEO of a company in Washington, D.C. I've been trying to escape my past, but it's catching up to me." Emma stared at him, her mind spinning. This wasn't the man she had taken in. This wasn't the man she had felt sorry for. This was someone else, someone powerful, someone she couldn't even begin to understand. But despite the shock, Emma couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for him. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice soft. Jack looked away, his face flushed with shame. "I didn't want to be seen as the rich guy. I didn't want to be judged. I just wanted someone to care about me, not my money. I thought you were different." His words hung in the air, and Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. What now? What was she supposed to do with this new information? Was this a test? Was Jack playing some kind of game with her? Or was he really just a man who had lost everything and was trying to rebuild his life? As the evening grew darker, Emma stood there, unsure of what to say next. The man she had opened her home to was no longer a stranger. But he was no longer the man she thought he was, either. And now, everything had changed. The next morning, Emma couldn't shake the conversation she had with Jack the night before. The revelation about his true identity had left her speechless. She had been so sure that he was just an old man struggling with life, but now she knew he was far from what she had imagined. She couldn't help but feel confused. Should she be angry at him for keeping such an important secret? Or should she feel sympathy for him, knowing that he had been so desperate to escape his past that he had to hide behind a lie? It was early, and Emma was getting ready for another long day at the diner. The kids were still asleep, and she took a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. Her mind kept racing. Jack had come into her life, and everything had changed. He wasn't just a charity case. He wasn't the frail, helpless man she had taken pity on. He was a millionaire, a powerful businessman who had been hiding in plain sight. But despite his wealth and status, he still seemed broken, still seemed lost. Emma felt a pull toward him, but at the same time, she wasn't sure if she could trust him. Was he using her kindness to manipulate her? Or was he genuinely in need of help? As she went through her day, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she had been part of something bigger than herself. She had taken in a stranger, someone who had been hiding his true identity, but now she felt like she was in the middle of a complex web she didn't fully understand. Jack had promised to explain himself, to tell her the truth about why he had come to her for help. But deep down, Emma knew it wasn't just about helping a man in need. There was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. The kids were at daycare, and Emma was getting ready to head back to work when she received a call from Jack. "Emma, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice urgent. "I've made a decision, and I need you to hear me out." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected to hear from him so soon. "Where are you?" she asked, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach. "I'm at the park, near your place. Please, I need you to meet me." Emma quickly grabbed her coat and headed out. When she arrived at the park, she found Jack sitting on a bench, looking as lost as he had the night before. He looked up when he saw her, and immediately stood up. "Thank you for coming," he said softly, his eyes full of gratitude. Emma walked over and sat down beside him. "What's going on, Jack?" she asked, her voice calm but laced with concern. Jack took a deep breath and looked out at the snow-covered landscape before him. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," he began, his voice steady. "About you, about me, about the past I've been running from." He paused, as if searching for the right words. "I've lived my life in a bubble, hiding behind my wealth and status. But now I realize that it hasn't brought me happiness. I've lost everything that mattered to me. My family, my dignity, my sense of purpose. And the truth is, I've been searching for something I can't even name." Emma listened intently, trying to make sense of his words. "And what is it that you're looking for?" she asked. Jack turned to her, his expression serious. "I'm looking for redemption, Emma. I'm looking for a chance to make things right, to find peace. I know I can't change the past, but I want to try and make up for the mistakes I've made. I've hurt people, and I've hurt myself. I don't expect you to understand, but I want you to know that I'm not the man I used to be." Emma took a deep breath, trying to process everything he had just said. She had always believed in second chances, in the power of forgiveness. But could she forgive him for the deception? Could she trust him again after everything that had happened? "Jack," she said, her voice soft, "I want to believe you. I really do. But I don't know if I can trust you yet. You've kept so much from me, and I don't know if I can just let that go." Jack's face softened, and he placed a hand on hers. "I understand," he said quietly. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope that, in time, you'll see that I'm not the same person I was before." They sat there in silence for a few moments, each lost in their own thoughts. The snow continued to fall softly around them, and the world felt still, almost frozen in time. Emma knew that Jack was telling the truth, but she also knew that it wasn't going to be easy to move forward. She had her own life, her own struggles, and her own children to take care of. But something about Jack's vulnerability, his willingness to change, made her want to help him, to give him the chance he was asking for. "I'm not sure what the future holds, Jack," Emma said finally, breaking the silence. "But I'll help you. I'll help you get back on your feet. I'll give you a chance." Jack's face lit up with relief, and he squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Emma. You don't know how much this means to me." As Emma looked at Jack, she realized that, just like her, he was still searching for something. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that they both had a long road ahead of them. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could help him find the peace he was looking for. The world was full of surprises, and she was beginning to realize that some of the most unexpected ones were the ones that changed everything. Days passed, and Emma found herself slowly letting go of the doubts she had once had about Jack. As promised, she continued to support him, but the more time they spent together, the more complicated things seemed to get. Jack's presence in her life had become both a source of comfort and uncertainty. Emma didn't mind helping him, but the question of whether he was truly ready to change kept haunting her. She saw glimmers of the man he once was, the one who had built a powerful empire, but she also saw a man who had been humbled, a man who now sought something simpler, something he had lost long ago: human connection. One afternoon, Jack asked her to meet him at a small coffee shop on the corner of her street. He had been quieter than usual for the past few days, and Emma could sense that something was weighing on his mind. She arrived a little early, hoping to gather her thoughts before they spoke. When Jack finally showed up, he looked more disheveled than usual, his hair unkempt and his face tired. He sat down across from Emma, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "I've been thinking a lot," Jack finally said, his voice low and hesitant. "I need to tell you something that might change everything between us." Emma felt a pang of anxiety, but she didn't interrupt him. She had promised to listen, and that was what she intended to do. "Go ahead," she said, trying to sound calm. "I'm listening." Jack looked down at his hands, his fingers fidgeting with the coffee cup. "I've been running from my past, Emma. I thought that by leaving everything behind, by cutting ties with my family and the company, I could start fresh. But the truth is, you can't outrun who you are. I can't just erase the life I built, no matter how much I want to." Emma didn't say anything at first. She simply waited, letting him continue. "I'm ashamed of the way I've treated people, especially my family," Jack went on. "My relationship with my father was always strained. He built the company, and I took it over when he retired, but it was never enough for him. No matter how successful I became, it was always about the money, about power, and I hated it. I hated who I became in the process." Emma leaned forward, her heart heavy with empathy. She could see the pain in Jack's eyes, and it made her realize just how much he had been carrying. "But why didn't you tell me this earlier?" she asked softly. "Why hide everything from me?" Jack sighed, his eyes meeting hers for the first time. "I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know how to say that I was ashamed of who I had been. I didn't want you to see me as just another rich man with nothing to offer. I thought if I showed you the real me, the broken version, you wouldn't want to be around me. But now I realize that hiding from you was a mistake." Emma sat in silence for a moment, processing everything Jack had said. She knew that his past wasn't something he could easily overcome. She had seen glimpses of the man he was before: powerful, confident, and sometimes ruthless. But now, he was different. He was vulnerable, unsure of himself, and searching for redemption. "Jack, I want to believe that you can change, Emma said softly, her voice steady but full of warmth. But I need to see it for myself. I need to see that you're willing to do the work, that you're not just looking for a way out of your problems. I'm here to help you, but you have to meet me halfway. Jack nodded, his eyes full of gratitude. I understand, he said. And I promise you, I'm ready to change. I don't want to go back to the man I was. I want to be better, not just for you, but for myself too. The conversation shifted, and for the first time in a long while, Emma felt a sense of hope. She didn't know how things would unfold, but she knew one thing for certain. Jack was sincere in his desire to change, and that was all she needed to hear. Over the next few weeks, Emma continued to help Jack as he tried to adjust to life outside of his former world. They spent more time together, and slowly, Jack began to open up more about his past. He talked about his family, about the mistakes he had made, and about the weight of the legacy he had inherited. Emma listened, offering her support without judgment. And for the first time, Jack felt like he could breathe. It wasn't easy for him. The old habits, the desire for control, and the pull of his former life constantly tugged at him. But every time he felt himself slipping, Emma was there to remind him of the person he wanted to be. Emma didn't just help Jack with his past. She helped him see that he could still have a future, that his mistakes didn't have to define him. She encouraged him to start small, to rebuild his life from the ground up. Jack had always been used to handling things on his own, but now, for the first time, he was learning how to accept help, how to trust others, and most importantly, how to trust himself. As the weeks went by, Emma noticed a change in Jack. He seemed more at peace with himself, less burdened by the weight of his past. They spent more time together, sharing simple moments like cooking dinner or walking around the neighborhood. Jack began to open up to the idea of working with local charities, something Emma had suggested, and he started to feel like he was making a real difference, even in small ways. One evening, as they sat on the couch together, Jack looked over at Emma, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You were right," he said quietly. "I didn't know how to live without my old life. But now, I'm starting to realize that it's not about what I had. It's about what I can give." Emma smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She didn't know what the future held for them, but she knew that whatever happened, they had both taken the first steps toward healing, toward a new chapter in their lives. Jack's past was still there, lingering in the background, but it no longer defined him. Together they were moving forward, one step at a time. It had been several weeks since Emma had agreed to help Jack. They had developed a comfortable routine. Jack was making progress, and Emma could see the changes in him. He no longer seemed like the broken man who had stumbled into her life, hiding from the world. Now, there was a quiet determination about him, a genuine effort to rebuild his life from the ground up. They had grown closer, their conversations becoming more personal. Emma had learned more about his past, about the weight of his family legacy, and the empire he had inherited. Jack had spent so many years fighting against that legacy, trying to find his own path, but he was beginning to realize that he couldn't outrun his past. It was a part of who he was, but it didn't define him. One afternoon, Jack called Emma while she was at work. She had just finished a rush of orders at the diner when her phone buzzed. She stepped outside, hoping for a moment of quiet to speak with him. "Emma, I've been thinking." Jack's voice came through the phone, steady but filled with uncertainty. "I want to do something more, something meaningful. I'm ready to step out of the shadows of my past and make a real difference." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had been waiting for this moment, the moment when Jack would truly embrace the idea of changing his life. "What do you mean?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "I want to start a project," Jack continued, the words coming faster now. "Something to give back, to help people who are struggling, just like I was. I want to make sure that the rest of my life isn't about chasing after power or money. I want it to be about making a real impact." Emma felt a surge of pride. She had seen the transformation in Jack, but hearing him talk about wanting to help others made her believe that he was truly committed to his own change. "That sounds amazing, Jack," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "I'm so proud of you. Whatever you need, I'm here to help." Jack paused for a moment, and when he spoke again, there was a new sense of resolve in his voice. "Thank you, Emma. I've been looking into local charities and organizations that focus on helping people who are homeless or struggling with addiction. I think I can make a difference in that world, and I want to start by helping in small ways." "You're already doing it, Jack," Emma replied, feeling a lump in her throat. "Just by wanting to make a change, you've already made a difference." The rest of the conversation was filled with plans. Jack wanted to use his connections to fund local initiatives, to work with shelters, and to provide resources for those who had been abandoned by society. Emma was excited for him, knowing that he was starting to find a sense of purpose again. But as much as Jack was moving forward, Emma couldn't help but wonder if his past would ever truly be behind him. She had heard whispers from some of the people around town about Jack's real identity. Some were skeptical, questioning whether he was just using his newfound humility as a way to manipulate others. Emma, however, had always believed in him. She knew Jack was sincere, but the question remained, would the rest of the world see it the same way? The next day, Jack invited Emma to a meeting with a group of local activists who worked with the homeless. He wanted her to come along, to see his vision in action. Emma was a little nervous, unsure of what to expect, but she agreed to go. As they entered the small community center, Emma noticed the way Jack was treated. Some of the people greeted him with a sense of familiarity, while others seemed hesitant. There was no mistaking the fact that his past still haunted him. People knew who he was, and even though he was trying to make amends, there were still some who couldn't let go of his former reputation. But Jack didn't seem bothered by the whispers. He stood tall, his back straight, as he spoke with the group about his ideas for a new project aimed at helping homeless families. He was passionate, and for the first time, Emma saw the old Jack, the businessman, the leader emerge. He was still that person, but now, he was using his skills for something meaningful. After the meeting, as they walked back to the car, Emma turned to him. "I saw how they reacted to you in there," she said gently. "Do you think you can ever really escape your past?" Jack looked at her, his eyes thoughtful. "Maybe not completely," he said, his voice calm. "But I'm not running from it anymore. I'm not trying to hide who I was. I'm just trying to be better than I was yesterday." Emma smiled, feeling a deep sense of respect for him. She had seen him struggle, but now, she saw someone who was truly trying to make a difference. "I believe in you, Jack," she said, her voice full of sincerity. "And I'm here for you, every step of the way." As the days passed, Jack continued to work on his project, meeting with more people in the community, learning about the challenges that the homeless and struggling families faced. Emma was by his side, supporting him in every way she could. But even as they moved forward, the shadows of Jack's past lingered. There were moments when the old habits crept back in, moments when Jack was tempted to take control, to use his wealth and influence to get what he wanted. But each time, Emma was there, reminding him of the path he had chosen, the path toward redemption. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Jack and Emma sat on the couch in her small apartment. They were both exhausted, but there was a sense of peace between them. Jack turned to Emma, a small smile on his lips. "You know, I never thought I would be here," he said, his voice full of wonder. "I never thought I would be this happy, doing something that actually matters." Emma reached over and took his hand. "I always knew you had it in you," she said softly. "You just needed the right reason to fight for it." Jack squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I never thought I would find someone like you, Emma. You've changed my life." Emma looked at him, a smile playing on her lips. "We've changed each other, Jack," she said quietly. "And that's the best kind of change there is." Weeks passed, and Emma could see the changes in Jack every day. He was no longer the man who had walked into her life so unexpectedly. Jack had found a new purpose, a new sense of direction. He wasn't just working to redeem himself in Emma's eyes anymore. He was working for something much bigger. He was determined to make a real impact in the community, to help those who, like him, had fallen on hard times. He had started small, contributing to local charities, working with shelters, and even using his business connections to fund programs for homeless families. Jack had found a sense of fulfillment in giving back, and Emma couldn't have been prouder of him. But with Jack's newfound purpose came new challenges. The more successful his charitable endeavors became, the more people from his past started to resurface. Old business associates, former friends, and even members of his family started to reach out, trying to reconnect. They were curious about his sudden change in focus, but Emma could see the skepticism in their eyes. They weren't sure if Jack had truly changed, or if this was just another one of his phases. One evening, as Jack and Emma were sitting down for dinner, Jack's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face tightened. It was a message from his sister, Sarah. Emma had heard Jack mention Sarah before, but he hadn't spoken to her in years. They had been close growing up, but after Jack's rise to power, their relationship had become strained. Sarah had never agreed with Jack's business practices, and their arguments had driven a wedge between them. Jack hesitated before responding to the message. Emma could tell he was torn. "What is it?" she asked gently. Jack sighed, setting the phone down. "It's my sister. She wants to meet." Emma raised an eyebrow, surprised. "After all this time?" Jack nodded, a look of uncertainty on his face. "I don't know what she wants. We haven't spoken in years, not since I took over the company. She didn't like the direction I was going, and I didn't exactly make things better by shutting her out." Emma reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "Do you want to meet with her?" Jack thought for a moment before answering. "I don't know. Part of me feels like I should, like it's time to make amends. But I'm not sure if she'll believe that I've changed." Emma smiled softly. "People can surprise you, Jack. Maybe this is the chance you need to rebuild that relationship." Jack nodded slowly. "I guess I can't run from my past forever." The next day, Jack and Emma met Sarah at a small cafe near Jack's old office. Sarah was already sitting at a corner table when they arrived, looking just as sharp and put together as Emma had imagined. She looked older, a little more worn than the last time Jack had seen her, but still with the same confident demeanor that Emma had heard so much about. As Jack and Emma walked in, Sarah looked up, her expression unreadable. "Jack," she said, her voice cold but not unfriendly. "It's been a long time." Jack hesitated for a moment before taking a seat across from her. "Too long," he said quietly. There was an awkward silence as the three of them sat there, unsure of how to begin. Finally, Sarah spoke up. "I've heard about what you've been doing, Jack. The charities, the homeless projects. I never thought I'd see the day when you would take up something like that." Jack looked down at his hands, trying to find the right words. "I know I've made mistakes, Sarah. I didn't always listen to you, and I didn't always do the right thing. But I'm trying to make it right. I'm trying to be someone I can be proud of." Sarah studied him for a moment, her eyes softening slightly. "I'm glad to hear that. But I have to admit, I'm still not sure what to make of it. You were always so focused on the business, on the money. It's hard to believe that this is the real you." Jack nodded. "I understand. I don't expect you to believe it overnight. I've done a lot of things I regret. But I'm working on it, Sarah, and I'm not the same person I was before." Sarah looked at Emma, who had been quiet up until this point. Emma gave her a warm, encouraging smile. "I believe in him," she said softly. Sarah raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Emma's words. "You do?" Emma nodded. "Yes. I've seen the change in him. He's not the man he used to be." Sarah seemed to consider this for a moment before looking back at Jack. "You've got a good woman by your side, Jack. That's more than I can say for you before. But I still have my doubts. I guess only time will tell if you've really changed." Jack sighed, feeling the weight of the conversation. "I know it's not going to be easy, and I know I've lost a lot of trust along the way, but I'm asking for a chance. I want to rebuild this family, even if it's one step at a time." Sarah sat back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "I'll give you that chance," she said quietly, "but it's going to take more than just words. You have to prove it, to me and to yourself." Jack smiled, a weight lifting off his shoulders. "I understand, and I will." After the meeting, as they walked back to the car, Emma turned to Jack. "That went better than I expected," she said, a little surprised. Jack looked over at her, a small smile on his face. "Yeah, I guess I was worried about nothing." Emma smiled back. "You're not alone anymore, Jack. You don't have to carry all that weight by yourself." Jack squeezed her hand, grateful for her support. "I know, and I'm not going anywhere." As they drove home, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for the future. There were still challenges ahead, but Jack had taken a big step forward today. He had made the effort to reach out, to begin healing the wounds of his past, and that was something worth celebrating. As the weeks passed, Jack's efforts to rebuild his life seemed to be gaining traction. Emma watched with growing admiration as he worked tirelessly to make a difference in the community. He was no longer just the man who had walked into her life. One cold night, he was becoming a person she could truly respect. Jack's charitable initiatives were expanding, and he was beginning to earn back some of the trust that he had lost. But as things were moving forward, Jack still struggled with something deeper: his past. Despite his commitment to change, the shadow of his former life loomed over him. Every time he made progress, a reminder from his past seemed to crop up, testing his resolve. One afternoon, Jack received an unexpected phone call from a former business partner, Michael. Emma was sitting with Jack in the living room when he took the call. Jack's face immediately stiffened as he listened, and Emma could tell something was wrong. "I'll be there," Jack said, his voice clipped. "I'll meet you at the office in an hour." When he hung up the phone, Emma looked at him, concerned. "What's going on?" she asked. Jack hesitated before answering. "It's Michael," he said, running a hand through his hair. "He wants to talk. He says it's about the company." Emma raised an eyebrow. "The company? Jack? I thought you walked away from all of that." Jack sighed and leaned back against the couch. "I did. But Michael, he's been calling for weeks. He says there's a problem, something he needs my help with." Emma frowned, sensing the tension in his voice. "Are you going to meet him?" she asked softly. Jack looked at her, torn. "I don't know. Part of me wants to walk away and leave it all behind, but another part of me feels like I owe it to the people I left behind to at least listen." Emma reached out and placed a hand on his. "You don't owe anyone anything, Jack. You've already done more than enough to make up for your past. But if you feel like you need to go, then I'll be here when you get back." Jack nodded, grateful for her support. "Thanks, Emma. I don't know what to expect, but I'll try to handle it." Later that day, Jack drove to his old office building, a towering structure that still held the weight of his past. As he entered the lobby, memories of his former life flooded his mind. The polished floors, the sleek glass walls, the feeling of power he once had, it all felt so distant now. But there was still a part of him that was drawn to it. When he reached Michael's office, he was greeted with a firm handshake. Michael was a tall man with sharp features, a no-nonsense demeanor that had always contrasted with Jack's more charismatic style. "Glad you could make it," Michael said, motioning for Jack to take a seat. Jack sat down, feeling the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. "What's this about, Michael?" Jack asked. Michael hesitated before speaking. "It's about the company, Jack. We're in trouble. Financial trouble. The new management isn't working out, and the investors are getting nervous. They want you to come back." Jack leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "I told you I was done with all of that, Michael. I walked away. I've moved on." Michael's tone grew more urgent. I know, but you built this company. You were the one who made it what it is, and now it's falling apart. We need you, Jack. We need your vision, your leadership." Jack took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He had been running from this for so long, and now it was right in front of him again. "I'm not the same man I was, Michael. I can't just go back to that life. I can't go back to being that person who was only focused on power and money. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to help people. I'm working on something that matters." Michael didn't seem convinced. "This company matters too, Jack. You can't just abandon it. If you don't step in, we might lose everything. The investors are already talking about selling." Jack felt the weight of Michael's words, but he knew deep down that he couldn't go back to that life. "I'm sorry, Michael," Jack said quietly, "but I'm not that person anymore. I can't be the CEO again. I won't do it." There was a long silence as Michael stared at him, disappointment clear in his eyes. "I don't understand, Jack," he said, shaking his head. "I thought you were smarter than this. You're throwing everything away." Jack stood up, feeling a sense of finality. "No, Michael. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm moving forward, and I suggest you do the same." With that, Jack walked out of the office, leaving the past behind him for good. When he returned home, Emma was waiting for him. She could tell from the look on his face that something had happened. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice soft. Jack walked over to her, taking her hands in his. "I stood my ground," he said, his voice steady. I told him I'm not going back to that life. Emma smiled, feeling a surge of pride for him. I'm so proud of you, Jack, she said, her voice full of warmth. You made the right choice. Jack kissed her forehead, his heart full of gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, Emma. You've helped me more than you know. As they sat together that evening, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. Jack had made a decision, and he had chosen the path of redemption. It wasn't going to be easy, but she knew that with each step he took forward, he was leaving his old life further behind. Together, they were building something new, something real. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Days passed since Jack's conversation with Michael, and while he had made the right choice, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. He was finding fulfillment in his charitable work, and had come to terms with his past, but he still couldn't fully escape the weight of his previous life. It wasn't just the company or the money, it was the people, the connections, the world he had left behind. It all seemed so distant now, yet still, it had a hold on him. Emma could see the subtle changes in Jack. He seemed restless, despite everything. He was happy with the progress he was making in his new life, but there was a part of him still looking for something. She didn't know what it was, but she sensed that he was not fully at peace. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Jack spoke up. I've been thinking about my father, he said quietly. I know I've been avoiding thinking about him, but the truth is, I've never really forgiven him. Not for how he treated me, not for the way he pushed me into this world. Emma turned to look at him, her heart aching for him. She knew how hard Jack had worked to distance himself from his father's influence. His father had been a powerful figure in the business world, and Jack had always felt the pressure to live up to his expectations. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive him? Emma asked gently. Jack paused, his eyes distant. I don't know. I've tried to let go of the anger, but it's been hard. I don't even know where to begin. I know he's not around anymore. He passed away a few years ago, but there are still so many unresolved feelings. I feel like I never got closure. Emma placed her hand on his, offering him silent support. Maybe closure isn't something you'll get from him, but something you need to find for yourself, she said softly. Jack nodded, looking down at their intertwined hands. I think you're right. I've spent so much time resenting him for everything he did, but maybe it's time to let it go. I've been carrying this burden for too long. The next day, Jack made a decision. He would visit his father's grave. It was a difficult choice, but he knew it was something he needed to do. Emma offered to go with him, but Jack insisted that he needed to do this alone. It's something I need to face on my own, Emma, he said, his voice full of resolve. I appreciate you wanting to be there, but this is something I have to do by myself. Emma understood. She could see how much it meant to him, and she respected his need for solitude. Jack left in the early afternoon, heading to the cemetery where his father was buried. As he drove, memories of his childhood, of his strained relationship with his father, flooded his mind. His father had always been distant, focused on work, never really present when Jack needed him. The pressure to succeed had been constant, and Jack had spent most of his life trying to prove himself first to his father, and then to the world. When Jack arrived at the cemetery, he walked slowly through the rows of headstones, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. There was anger, yes, but there was also a deep sense of loss. He had never gotten the chance to truly reconcile with his father. The man he had once looked up to had never been the father he had hoped for. And that left a scar that had never fully healed. He stopped in front of his father's grave, the name etched into the stone. For a long moment, he simply stood there, lost in thought. I don't know what I'm supposed to say to you, Jack whispered, his voice breaking the silence. I've spent my whole life resenting you, and I've never understood why you couldn't be there for me. But I've realized something. I've spent too much time letting you control me, even after you were gone. I've been living my life trying to make up for something I never had, and I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be free of the weight you left me with. Jack paused, taking a deep breath as he fought back the emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. I forgive you, Dad, he said, his voice steady. I forgive you for everything. And I'm going to let go of the past. I'm going to live my life for me now. For the first time in years, Jack felt a sense of release. He had finally confronted the ghosts of his past, and he felt lighter, freer. As he stood there, he realized that forgiveness didn't always mean forgetting. It meant freeing himself from the chains that had bound him for so long. When Jack returned home that evening, he felt different. There was a sense of peace about him, a calmness that hadn't been there before. Emma noticed the change immediately. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Jack smiled, his eyes filled with a quiet sense of relief. "I think I've finally found some peace," he said, his voice calm. "I let go of all the anger, all the resentment. It feels like I can breathe again." Emma smiled back, her heart swelling with pride for him. "I'm so proud of you, Jack," she said softly. "You've come so far." Jack reached for her hand, his grip gentle. "I couldn't have done it without you, Emma. You've been my strength when I didn't have any. You've helped me find myself again." Emma kissed him softly on the cheek. "We've found each other, Jack, and we're both moving forward, together." As the evening went on, they sat together in the living room, quietly talking about the future. Jack had finally found the closure he had been seeking, and he was ready to move on, fully embracing the life he was building with Emma. They had both come so far, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, Jack knew that with Emma by his side, he could face anything. The past no longer controlled him. It was time to look forward to the future they would create together. As the days went by, Jack continued to adjust to his new life, and things between him and Emma only grew stronger. They had faced so many challenges together, but now, there was a sense of calm that surrounded them. Jack was no longer burdened by the weight of his past, and with each passing day, he felt more secure in the life he was building. But despite this newfound peace, there was still one obstacle: they hadn't fully addressed the judgment of others. Jack had made progress in rebuilding his life, and Emma had supported him every step of the way, but the outside world still had its opinions. Jack's past was far from forgotten, and some people still saw him as the wealthy businessman who had made questionable decisions. There were whispers in the community, doubts about whether Jack's change was genuine or just a temporary phase. Emma understood this, and although she never let it affect their relationship, she knew Jack still struggled with the perception of others. One afternoon, while they were having coffee at a local cafe, Emma brought up the subject. "Jack," she said, looking at him across the table, "I know you've made amazing progress, but I can see that sometimes you're still affected by what other people think. Are you okay with that?" Jack looked down at his cup, his fingers tracing the edge of the mug. "I'm trying to be, Emma. I really am. But it's hard when people still see me as the person I used to be. I can't change their minds overnight." Emma reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "You don't have to change their minds. All you have to do is keep being the person you are now. The rest doesn't matter." Jack smiled softly, appreciating her support. "I know you're right, but sometimes it's hard to ignore the looks, the whispers. It's like no matter what I do, people still see the old me." Emma squeezed his hand, giving him a reassuring smile. "It's okay, Jack. The people who matter, the people who see you for who you truly are, they will be the ones who stay. And the others? Well, they don't get to define you." Jack nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He had been so focused on the approval of others for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to live for himself. But now, with Emma by his side, he was beginning to understand. It wasn't about gaining approval from the world, it was about being true to himself and living a life that he could be proud of. The next few weeks were filled with small victories. Jack continued his work with local charities, and with Emma's encouragement, he started reaching out to people who had once been a part of his old life, offering support and guidance. He wasn't trying to make amends with everyone, but he wanted to show that he was capable of change. Meanwhile, Emma continued to balance her work at the diner with her life at home. She had always been independent, but with Jack, she felt a sense of partnership that she had never known before. They were building something together, a relationship based on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. One evening, after a long day of work, Emma came home to find Jack sitting on the couch, a thoughtful expression on his face. "What's on your mind?" she asked, sitting down beside him. Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "I've been thinking about something," he began, his voice serious. "I know I've made a lot of progress, but there's still a part of me that feels like I haven't truly earned everything I have now. I know I've made mistakes, and I can't help but wonder if people will ever forgive me." Emma listened carefully, her heart aching for him. She knew that Jack's past weighed heavily on him, even if he didn't show it. "Jack, you've come so far. You've done the work. You've changed your life, and you've done it on your own terms. That's more than most people can say. You've earned everything you have now, not just because of your actions, but because of the person you've become." Jack took a deep breath, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I don't know why I still doubt myself," he admitted. "But when I look at everything I've done, it doesn't feel like enough. I guess I'm still haunted by the things I've done in the past." Emma gently placed her hand on his cheek, turning his face toward hers. "The past is gone, Jack. What matters is who you are now and what you're doing today. You've made mistakes, yes, but you've learned from them. You've made amends, and you've built a new life, one that you can be proud of. That's what counts." Jack gazed at her, his eyes softening. "Thank you, Emma. I don't know what I'd do without you." She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "You don't have to do anything without me, Jack. We're in this together." In the weeks that followed, Jack continued to focus on the work that was bringing him fulfillment, while Emma supported him every step of the way. He had let go of his past, but he was also learning to let go of his insecurities, to stop seeking validation from others. He was learning to live for himself, for the future, and for the people who mattered most, like Emma. One day, while they were walking through the park together, Jack turned to her with a smile. "You know, I've been thinking," he said, his voice light. "Maybe it's time for me to stop running from my past and finally accept it. All of it. The good, the bad, and everything in between. Maybe that's the final step in my journey." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with pride. "I think that's a beautiful idea, Jack," she said. "Accepting the past is the first step toward moving forward." Jack nodded, looking out at the horizon with a sense of contentment. "I'm ready," he said quietly. "I'm ready to move forward, with you." And with that, they walked hand in hand into their future, knowing that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. As time went on, Jack and Emma's life together grew even more fulfilling. Jack had found peace with his past, finally letting go of the burdens that had weighed him down for so long. He was more committed to his work with local charities than ever. And he had become a respected figure in the community. His efforts to help the homeless, to support families in need, and to mentor young people had made a real impact. Emma continued to be by his side, supporting him in every way she could. She had never imagined that her life would change so drastically, but now, with Jack, she felt like they were both building something truly special. Yet, despite all the progress they had made, there were still challenges ahead. Jack had worked hard to rebuild his life, but the pressure of his past had not entirely faded. One afternoon, Jack received another unexpected call, this time from one of his old friends, Daniel, who had been a close confidant during his rise in the business world. Daniel had always been the voice of reason, the one person who Jack trusted most in the old days. But their friendship had dissolved when Jack left the business world behind. Daniel had never understood why Jack had walked away from everything. Now, years later, Daniel was calling him again. Jack hesitated before answering, wondering what this call could mean. "Hey, Jack," Daniel's voice came through the phone. "It's been a while. I know we haven't talked in a long time, but I need your help." Jack's heart sank. He hadn't heard from Daniel in years, and the last time they had spoken, it hadn't ended well. "What's going on?" Jack asked cautiously. "I'm in a tight spot, Jack," Daniel said, his voice low. "The company's going under. The investors are pulling out, and I need someone to help me save it. I need you, Jack. You're the only one who can turn this around." Jack felt a pang of guilt. He had left the business world for good, but hearing Daniel's desperation triggered something inside him. He knew what it felt like to be trapped, to feel like everything was slipping away. But he also knew that he couldn't go back to that life, not after everything he had worked so hard to build. "Daniel," Jack said slowly, "I can't help you with this. I'm not the person I used to be." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I don't need the old you, Jack," Daniel finally replied, his voice soft. "I need the man who's still got the drive, the man who can think outside the box. You've always had that, Jack. You've got a gift. You can fix things. Please, help me. The company's failing, and I don't know what else to do. Jack closed his eyes, conflicted. He had worked so hard to put his past behind him, to move on from the business world and the pressure that came with it. But the thought of leaving Daniel in this situation, of letting everything fall apart, tugged at his conscience. I'm sorry, Daniel. I can't go back. I've chosen a different path. I've got to stay true to that. Daniel didn't argue. I understand, he said quietly. But if you change your mind, you know where to find me. Jack ended the call, feeling a weight on his chest. He had made the right decision, but the pull of his past was stronger than ever. He knew that Daniel was facing a tough situation, and he hated the idea of walking away. But at the same time, he couldn't go back to the life that had nearly destroyed him. Jack sat in silence for a long time, wrestling with his thoughts. Emma noticed his mood and asked what was wrong. Jack took a deep breath before speaking. Daniel called, he said, his voice heavy. His company's in trouble. He wants me to come back, to help save it. Emma listened, her expression softening with understanding. And what did you say? She asked. I told him I couldn't help, Jack replied. I've made my choice. I'm not going back to that world. Emma nodded, squeezing his hand. I know it's hard, but you did the right thing, Jack. You've come so far. You can't let your past pull you back in. Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. I don't know what I'd do without you, Emma. You've been my rock through all of this. You've helped me become the man I am now. Emma smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. You've always had that strength inside you, Jack. I'm just here to help you see it. Jack kissed her forehead, his heart full of love. I know I made the right choice, but sometimes it's still hard to let go of the past. It's always there, lingering in the background. Emma looked into his eyes, her voice steady and comforting. The past doesn't define you, Jack. You've already proven that. You're not that man anymore. You've created a new life for yourself, a better one. Jack smiled, feeling the weight in his chest lift. He had come so far, and Emma was right. He couldn't keep letting his past control his future. Together, they had built something beautiful, and it was time to fully embrace it. Over the next few weeks, Jack continued to focus on his charitable work, helping more families in need, and dedicating himself to causes that brought him joy and fulfillment. He felt more confident than ever in the life he had created with Emma. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Jack turned to her. I've never felt more at peace, he said softly. With everything. With you. Emma smiled, her heart full. I feel the same way, Jack. I'm so proud of everything you've done. Jack reached for her hand, his eyes full of love. We've done this together, Emma, and I couldn't have done it without you. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack and Emma sat in silence, knowing that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, stronger than ever. It had been several months since Jack made his decision to step away from the business world for good. He and Emma had settled into a comfortable rhythm, balancing their work and their lives together. Jack was fully immersed in his charitable efforts, helping as many people as he could and truly finding joy in making a difference. He had moved beyond his past, embracing the life he was building with Emma and no longer feeling the weight of the man he had been. Still, Jack couldn't ignore the occasional lingering thoughts that crept into his mind. Although he had found peace within himself, the outside world still had its doubts. People who had known him before were slowly starting to recognize the changes in him, but there were still whispers about his sudden shift in focus. Some of the people who had once been close to him, people he had relied on in the business world, had a hard time understanding his decision to leave it all behind. One afternoon, as Jack and Emma were preparing dinner together, the doorbell rang. They exchanged curious glances before Jack wiped his hands on a dish towel and went to answer it. Standing on the doorstep was a man Jack hadn't seen in years, his old mentor and former business associate, Gregory. Gregory was a tall, imposing figure, with a sharp suit and an air of authority that Jack had once respected, but now felt a little out of place. Jack's heart raced, unsure of why Gregory was here, especially after so much time apart. Gregory, Jack said cautiously, keeping his tone even. What brings you here? Gregory gave him a tight smile, his eyes scanning the interior of the house before looking back at Jack. "I was in the area," he said, his voice smooth. "I thought I'd drop by and see how you're doing. You know, after everything. After your departure." Jack's stomach tightened at the mention of his departure from the company. "I'm doing fine," Jack replied, trying to keep his composure. "I'm happy with the changes I've made. Life is different now." Gregory's smile faded slightly, and he stepped closer. "I can see that," he said, his voice dropping a bit. "But I've been hearing things, Jack, about your newfound purpose, about how you've been giving all your time to charity and leaving behind everything you built. You've really turned your back on the business world, haven't you?" Jack stood straighter, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "Yes, I've turned my back on it. I'm not that man anymore. I don't need to chase after power or wealth. I've found something that matters more to me now." Gregory's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, there was a flicker of disbelief in his expression. "I can't say I understand it, Jack. You've got something most people would kill for. You had the connections, the influence, the wealth, and now you're throwing it all away?" Jack shook his head. "I'm not throwing anything away. I've just chosen a different path. I've chosen peace, purpose, and the opportunity to make a real impact. That's more valuable to me than any of the things I left behind." Gregory seemed to study him for a moment, as if weighing Jack's words carefully. Finally, he sighed. "You've always been idealistic, Jack. I'll give you that. But there's a lot more at stake than just doing good work. This world is about power. It's about control. And you're telling me you walked away from all of that?" Jack felt a surge of frustration, but kept his tone calm. "It's not about control, Gregory. It's about being able to live with myself. I can't be the man I was. I can't keep pretending that the power and the wealth I was chasing were the things that would make me happy." Gregory shook his head slowly, his face a mixture of disbelief and concern. "You're going to regret this, Jack. I know you, and when you do, it'll be too late." Jack met his gaze steadily. "Maybe, but I'm okay with that. I'm not living for the past anymore. I'm living for today, and I'm living for the future. The future that I'm building with Emma." Gregory didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at Emma, who had walked up behind Jack, sensing the tension in the air. Gregory's expression softened ever so slightly as he gave her a polite nod. "I see you've got someone by your side, Jack," he said, his tone less harsh now. "But mark my words, this won't last forever. The world is too unforgiving." Jack took a deep breath, his resolve unwavering. "I'm not afraid of the world anymore. I've faced my fears, and I'm finally at peace with who I am." Gregory's gaze lingered for a moment longer before he turned and walked away without another word. Jack closed the door, his chest tight, but his mind clear. Emma stood beside him, her presence grounding him, as she placed a hand on his arm. "You did the right thing," she said softly. Jack nodded, his voice steady. "I know. But it's hard, Emma. People like Gregory, people from my past, don't understand. They won't understand." Emma looked up at him, her eyes filled with understanding. "You can't live for them, Jack. You've already made your choice, and you've made it for the right reasons. The people who truly matter will see the change in you, and I see it every day." Jack smiled, the weight of the conversation lifting as he felt the warmth of Emma's words. "I don't need anyone's approval but yours," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Emma smiled back, her heart swelling with love. "And you have it, Jack, always." As the days went on, Jack felt more and more confident in his decision. He had walked away from the past, and although the world around him might not always understand, he knew he had made the right choice. He had Emma by his side, and together they were building a life filled with purpose and love. Jack no longer needed the approval of the world. He had everything he needed right here, in this moment. With Emma, he was free to be the man he had always wanted, to be the man he had become. And that, Jack realized, was all that truly mattered. The months that followed Gregory's visit were filled with small victories and moments of growth. Jack had found his purpose, and Emma was right there with him, every step of the way. The judgment of others no longer had the same power over him. As he continued his work with the community, Jack realized that the most important thing wasn't what other people thought it was, what he had built, both within himself and with Emma. Together, They had created a life full of meaning, a life based on the values that mattered to them. Jack had found peace with his past. But there was one thing he had yet to address: the possibility of his future. He and Emma had talked about it briefly before, but now, as the weeks went on, the topic began to resurface in their conversations. Jack knew that he had made the right decision by leaving his old life behind, but the question remained: what would their future look like? Would they continue building their lives in this small town, or would they one day take their work to other places, spreading their mission and helping more people? Jack and Emma had found so much fulfillment in the work they were doing now, but they both knew there was more to be done. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jack turned to Emma with a thoughtful expression. "Emma, do you ever think about the future?" he asked quietly. Emma looked at him, her eyes soft and warm. "Of course I do," she said, her voice gentle. "But I'm not worried about it. I'm just enjoying the journey we're on together. Whatever the future holds, we'll face it together, just like we always have." Jack smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. "I've been thinking about it a lot lately. I know we've found something truly special here, something that means so much to both of us. But there's still so much more we can do, so much more we can give." Emma's smile widened. "I know. I've seen how passionate you are about your work, about helping others. You've already made such a difference, Jack. And I believe that you'll continue to do amazing things. But no matter what, I'll be right here beside you, supporting you every step of the way." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. He knew Emma was right. They had created something beautiful, something worth fighting for. And together, they could face anything the future brought. "I don't know what I would do without you," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You've been my anchor, Emma. You've shown me that it's okay to let go of the past and embrace the future, no matter how uncertain it may seem." Emma reached out and took his hand in hers, squeezing it gently. "We've built something strong together, Jack, and I know that whatever happens, we'll keep building, side by side." As the days passed, Jack and Emma continued to work hard, their efforts making a tangible difference in the lives of the people they helped. But Jack's thoughts about the future didn't stop there. He knew that he wanted to expand the work they were doing. He wanted to help more people, to make a lasting impact in communities beyond their own. He had come so far, but there was still so much more he wanted to accomplish. One day, Jack sat down with Emma and shared his thoughts. "I've been thinking about expanding," he said, his voice full of conviction. "We've done so much already, but there's so much more we can do. I want to take our mission to other cities, other communities. I want to help as many people as possible." Emma listened, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "I think that's an amazing idea, Jack," she said, her voice full of enthusiasm. "You've already done so much here. Imagine how many lives we could touch if we expanded our efforts." Jack smiled at her, grateful for her unwavering support. "I've been afraid to dream that big, but now I see how much potential there is. We have the power to change lives, and we can make a real difference if we keep pushing forward." Emma nodded. "I'm with you every step of the way, Jack. Whatever the future holds, I'll be there to help you make it happen." Jack felt a surge of excitement. He had never thought of himself as a dreamer, but now, with Emma by his side, he could see the possibilities. They had already accomplished so much, but the future was wide open. Together, they could make it anything they wanted. Over the next few weeks, Jack began to put his plans into motion. He reached out to other organizations, shared his vision for expanding their work, and started building a network of like-minded individuals who wanted to make a difference. Emma continued to support him, helping with the logistics and ensuring that their current projects stayed on track while they worked on new initiatives. They both knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but they were ready for it. They had faced so much already, and they knew they could overcome whatever obstacles came their way. Jack felt a deep sense of fulfillment as he worked toward this new goal. For the first time in a long while, he could see the future clearly. It wasn't about wealth or success, it was about helping others and making a difference in the world. And with Emma by his side, he knew that together they could create a future full of purpose, love, and possibility. As the days turned into weeks, Jack and Emma continued to work toward their shared dream. They expanded their reach, touched more lives, and built a legacy of love and service. And no matter what the future held, they knew they would face it together, side by side, knowing that they had already created something truly special. The journey they had started was only just beginning, and together, they would continue to build a life full of love, meaning, and impact. The next few months were filled with excitement and challenges as Jack and Emma continued to build their expanding charitable efforts. They had begun reaching out to other communities, spreading their work across cities, and helping more families than they could have ever imagined. Jack felt a deep sense of pride every time they met someone whose life they had touched, and Emma stood by him, unwavering in her belief in the mission they had set out to accomplish together. But with the increase in their impact came new pressures. As their efforts grew, so did the expectations from the communities they worked with, as well as from those who were now looking up to them as leaders in a movement they had started. Jack found himself constantly thinking about the future and the direction their work was heading. He had dreamed of this success, but now that it was becoming a reality, the weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. He had always been driven by the desire to make a difference, but now, with the scope of their work expanding, Jack couldn't help but feel overwhelmed at times. One evening, after another long day of meetings and planning, Jack came home to find Emma sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. The sight of her, calm and peaceful, always had a way of grounding him. He walked up beside her and sat down, letting the silence of the evening settle around them. "You've been quiet tonight," Emma said, her voice soft. "Is everything okay?" Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've just been thinking, Emma. We've come so far, and it feels like we're doing the right thing. But sometimes I can't shake the feeling that there's so much more to be done. I keep thinking about the future, about what's next, and it's starting to feel like I can't keep up." Emma looked at him, her eyes full of understanding. "Jack, I know it's a lot, but look at everything we've already accomplished. Look at the lives we've changed, the people we've helped. We're making a real difference, and I believe in you. I always have." Jack took a deep breath, appreciating her words, but the weight of responsibility was still heavy on his shoulders. "I just want to do more, Emma. I want to help even more people. I don't want to stop until we've done everything we can." Emma smiled softly, squeezing his hand. "You don't have to do everything on your own, Jack. You've already done so much. And the fact that you're constantly thinking about how to do more, that's what makes you so special. But it's okay to take a step back when you need to. We're in this together, and we'll figure it out." Jack looked at her, the reassurance in her words starting to ease his mind. "You're right. I've been so focused on what's next that I've forgotten to appreciate everything we've done so far. I guess I just want to make sure that we're doing enough. But I can't do it alone." Emma nodded. "You're not alone, Jack. And neither am I. We're a team. And as long as we have each other, we'll keep moving forward." Jack felt a sense of peace wash over him as Emma's words sunk in. He had been carrying the weight of their mission on his shoulders, thinking that he had to be the one to lead everything. But he realized now that he didn't have to do it alone. Together, they had already achieved so much, and as long as they kept supporting each other, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. Over the next few weeks, Jack took a step back from some of the more intense planning and focused more on the aspects of the work that he truly enjoyed: meeting with the families they were helping, hearing their stories, and witnessing the direct impact they were making. Emma, too, took on a bigger role in the day-to-day management, helping to organize new initiatives and ensuring that everything ran smoothly. They both realized that they were stronger together, and that their combined efforts made their mission all the more powerful. During this time, Jack also reached out to a few of the people he had worked with in the past, including some of his old business partners who had expressed interest in contributing to their charitable work. It was a reminder that even though Jack had left the world of business behind, the connections he had built over the years still had value. By using those connections for good, Jack was able to continue expanding their mission while staying true to the values that had driven him to change in the first place. One afternoon, as they sat in the office reviewing some new proposals for their next big initiative, Emma looked at Jack and smiled. "You know," she said, "I think we're really doing it. We're making the world a better place, one step at a time." Jack smiled back, his heart swelling with pride. "I think we are," he agreed. "But I know it's just the beginning. We've only scratched the surface." Emma reached over and took his hand. "And we'll keep going. We'll keep pushing, keep growing, and keep making a difference. Together." Jack nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The future was still uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure: they were on the right path. They had built something beautiful together. And whatever came next, they would face it as a team. They had already accomplished so much, and Jack knew that with Emma by his side, they could continue to do even more. As they looked toward the future, Jack felt a sense of calm wash over him. They had found their purpose, and as long as they stayed true to that purpose, they would continue to make a lasting impact. Whatever the future held, they were ready for it. Together, as Jack and Emma continued to grow their charitable efforts, their bond grew even stronger. Jack was no longer the man who had walked into her life, uncertain of his future. Now, he had found his purpose, and with Emma by his side, he knew that he was making a real difference. Their days were filled with planning new initiatives, meeting with local organizations, and working tirelessly to help as many people as they could. They had become a force for good, but with their success came new challenges. As their influence grew, they found themselves faced with more responsibility, and the stakes were higher than ever. Jack often found himself awake at night, thinking about the future and how far they could take this mission. It was no longer just about helping one family or one community. It was about creating a lasting change that could ripple across the country. Jack had always been driven by the desire to do good, but now the pressure to keep going weighed heavily on him. One evening, as he sat on the porch with Emma, he voiced his concerns. "I feel like we're on the verge of something big, Emma," he said quietly. "But it's hard to know if we're doing enough. The world is full of problems, and I'm just one person. Sometimes I wonder if we can really make a difference on the scale that I want to." Emma sat beside him, her gaze steady. "Jack, I know you want to help as many people as possible, but what you've done already has changed so many lives. And you've done it with integrity, with love, and with heart. We can't change everything overnight, but together we can keep pushing forward, one person at a time." Jack smiled, grateful for her unwavering support. "You're right. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the bigger picture, but it's the little steps, the everyday actions, that add up. I need to remember that." Emma nodded, her eyes full of warmth. "And I'll be right here, Jack, every step of the way. We're a team." As Jack reflected on Emma's words, he realized just how true they were. He had spent so much of his life striving for big goals, but it was the small, everyday moments that made the real difference. His work wasn't about changing the world overnight. It was about building relationships, offering support, and being present for people who needed help. The impact they were making, no matter how small it seemed at times, was enough. They didn't need to have all the answers. They just needed to keep going, one step at a time. Over the next few months, Jack and Emma continued to expand their efforts, reaching more communities and providing support to those who needed it most. They hosted fundraisers, worked with local businesses, and partnered with other organizations to increase their impact. Their work was never easy, but it was always rewarding. They were slowly but surely making the world a better place. But even as they celebrated their successes, there were still moments of doubt. Jack, especially, would occasionally find himself questioning if he was doing enough. He was constantly thinking about how they could help more people, how they could reach more communities. He had always been driven by the desire to do good, and that desire only grew stronger with time. One evening, Jack found himself walking through a local park, lost in thought. He had been on his way to meet Emma, but his mind was consumed by all the things they still hadn't accomplished. As he walked, he noticed a woman sitting on a bench, looking out at the horizon. She appeared to be lost in thought as well. Jack hesitated for a moment before approaching her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The woman looked up at him, startled at first, but then smiled. "I'm fine," she said, her voice soft. "Just thinking." Jack sat down beside her, sensing that she needed someone to talk to. "It's easy to get lost in our thoughts sometimes, isn't it?" he said, his voice calm. The woman nodded. "It is. I've been struggling with a lot lately, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life." Jack listened carefully as the woman explained that she had recently lost her job and was struggling to find her way. She didn't know where to turn or how to start over. Her words resonated deeply with Jack. He knew what it felt like to be lost, to feel like there was no clear path forward. He had been there once, too. "I know how you feel," Jack said softly. "I've been in a place where I didn't know what was next. But sometimes, it's not about having all the answers right away. It's about taking small steps, one at a time, and trusting that things will fall into place. The woman looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But what if I don't know where to start?" she asked. Jack smiled gently. "Start with what you know. Find what brings you peace, what makes you happy. You don't have to have everything figured out right now. The important thing is to keep moving forward, even if it's just a little bit at a time." The woman smiled, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." Jack stood up, offering her a hand. "You're not alone in this. We all have our struggles, but we're stronger when we help each other. Take it one step at a time." As Jack continued his walk, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't always about having a grand plan or a perfect path. It was about being there for people, offering support, and sharing a little bit of hope when it was needed most. And that was enough. Jack knew that he would continue to work hard to make the world a better place. But he also knew that he didn't have to do it all at once. It was the small moments, the quiet conversations, and the acts of kindness that truly mattered. He had found his purpose, and with Emma by his side, he knew that they would continue to make a lasting impact one person at a time. As Jack and Emma continued their journey together, the days seemed to pass by in a blur of meetings, events, and moments of quiet reflection. They had made tremendous strides in their mission to help others, but Jack still found himself thinking about the long road ahead. Every day brought new challenges, new opportunities, and new lessons. But through it all, Jack had learned something important. Success wasn't defined by how much you accomplished, but by the lives you touched along the way. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings and planning for their upcoming charity event, Jack sat on the couch, his mind racing. Emma had stepped out for a while, and Jack had some time to himself to think. He thought about the woman he had spoken to in the park the other day, the one who had been struggling to find her way. Her words still echoed in his mind. "What if I don't know where to start?" she had asked. Jack had given her advice in that moment, but as he sat alone now, he realized that he, too, had faced those same questions in his past. He had struggled with knowing where to start, unsure of what his next step should be. But now, he had a purpose, a mission, and it wasn't just about helping others, it was about giving them the tools to help themselves. Jack had learned that the true power of change came not from giving someone everything they needed, but from empowering them to find the strength within themselves. Just as Emma had been by his side, helping him find his own path, Jack realized that it was his turn to help others find theirs. A few minutes later, Emma returned to the house, her face lit up by the soft glow of the streetlights outside. She smiled at Jack, sensing his deep thoughts. "What's on your mind?" she asked as she set down her things. Jack looked up at her, his heart swelling with love and gratitude. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about how much we've done and how much more there is to do, about how we can keep growing and helping more people." Emma sat down beside him, her hand reaching for his. "I know. It's easy to get overwhelmed by it all, but look at everything we've already accomplished. Look at all the lives we've touched. The future is wide open, Jack, and we'll face it together." Jack smiled at her, grateful for her constant support. "I couldn't do this without you, Emma. I've always wanted to change the world, but now I realize it's not just about changing everything at once. It's about doing the small things that make a difference." Emma nodded, squeezing his hand. "Exactly. One step at a time. And the more people we help, the more lives we change. That's what matters." Jack felt a weight lift off his shoulders as Emma's words resonated with him. They had been working hard, but in his quest to do more, he had been losing sight of the impact they were already making. It wasn't about reaching every person in the world overnight, it was about the ripple effect they were creating, one person at a time. The next few weeks were filled with even more opportunities. Jack and Emma started focusing on mentorship programs, working with young people who were eager to make a difference in their own communities. Jack had always been a strong believer in education. And now, he saw the value in teaching the next generation how to create change. They held workshops, invited speakers, and even started a scholarship fund for young people who showed promise in their communities. Jack found a new passion in mentoring. As he worked closely with these young individuals, he saw his own journey reflected in them, the desire to do something meaningful, the uncertainty about how to begin, and the hope that they, too, could make a difference. It was a humbling experience for Jack, and as he watched the young people grow, He realized that they were not the only ones being helped. He too was learning, evolving, and growing. One evening, as they wrapped up a workshop, one of the young participants, a girl named Sarah, came up to Jack and Emma. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've inspired me to do more, to be more. I never thought I could make a difference, but now I see that I can." Jack smiled, his heart full. "You already are making a difference, Sarah," he said. "By believing in yourself, you're already helping to change the world." Sarah beamed at him, and Emma smiled, knowing how much their work had come full circle. They weren't just helping others, they were inspiring them to help, to take the lessons they had learned and pass them on. It was an endless cycle of giving, growing, and inspiring. As they left the workshop and walked back to their car, Emma turned to Jack with a smile. "I think we've done something special here, don't you?" she asked. Jack nodded, his eyes sparkling with pride. "Yes, we have. And it's only just the beginning." Over the next several months, their mentorship programs grew. They were able to reach even more young people, teaching them the skills they needed to become leaders in their communities. Jack and Emma continued to work side by side, supporting each other and building something that went beyond what they had originally imagined. They were creating a movement that didn't just help people, but empowered them to help others. Jack had found a new sense of purpose, and Emma had always known that this was where they were meant to be. As they looked toward the future, they knew that there would always be challenges ahead. But they also knew that with each step, they were changing the world in the most meaningful way possible. Together, they had built something incredible, something that would continue to grow for years to come, one person at a time. The months continued to pass as Jack and Emma grew closer to their shared dream of helping others. Their mentorship programs flourished, their charitable work spread, and the impact they were making in their community was undeniable. Yet, despite their success, Jack still found himself grappling with doubts from time to time. As the organization grew, there were more eyes on them, more expectations to meet, and more people who relied on the help they were offering. The weight of it all occasionally threatened to overwhelm him. He had come so far from the man he used to be, the business mogul, the one obsessed with wealth and status, but now, the pressure to do enough, to be enough for everyone, was becoming a constant burden. One afternoon, while Emma was preparing for an upcoming charity event, Jack decided to take a walk through the park to clear his mind. He needed to step away for a moment, to reset and think about the bigger picture. The sun was setting as he wandered through the paths, the colors of the sky shifting from golden to orange and purple. Jack paused near a bench, taking in the peacefulness around him. He closed his eyes, feeling the cool breeze on his face. In those quiet moments, Jack allowed himself to reflect on the journey they had been on. He thought about the people they had helped, the lives they had touched, and the way they had grown as individuals. But even in these moments of clarity, the question remained, was he doing enough? As he continued walking, Jack's thoughts wandered to his past. He thought about his father, the expectations that had weighed on him throughout his life, and the choices he had made that had led him to where he was now. His relationship with his father had been a complicated one, full of pressure and unmet expectations. Jack had spent years trying to prove himself to a man who was never satisfied, and it had shaped the person he had become. But now, with Emma by his side, Jack realized that he no longer needed to prove anything. He didn't have to live up to anyone's expectations but his own. He was living the life he had always wanted, and that was enough. Jack sat down on the bench, his thoughts swirling as the sun dipped below the horizon. It wasn't easy, but he was finally learning to let go of the constant need to do more. It was okay to take a step back, to give himself permission to enjoy the work he had already done, and to embrace the life he had built. The sound of footsteps approaching broke his train of thought, and Jack looked up to see Emma walking toward him. She smiled softly when she saw him sitting there, lost in thought. "You okay?" she asked, sitting down beside him. Jack nodded, his heart swelling with love for her. "I'm fine. Just needed a moment to think." Emma placed a hand on his. "I know it's a lot sometimes, but you don't have to carry it all on your own. We've come so far, and I'm so proud of everything we've accomplished together." Jack smiled at her, feeling the weight of her words. "I know. I've just been second-guessing myself lately, wondering if we're doing enough. There's always so much more to be done, and it feels like I'm constantly falling short." Emma turned to face him, her eyes full of understanding. "Jack, you've already done so much. You've given people hope. You've given them the tools to change their own lives. That's not something small. You're making a difference every day, even if it doesn't always feel like it." Jack let her words sink in, realizing how much he had been internalizing the pressure to do more. It wasn't about constantly pushing forward, about always needing to achieve bigger goals. It was about the impact they had already made. "You're right," Jack said quietly. "It's easy to get lost in the idea that we need to do more. But the truth is, we've already changed so many lives. Maybe I just need to remember that." Emma smiled and gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "Exactly. You've created something incredible, Jack. And we're only just getting started." As they sat there together, the peacefulness of the park surrounding them, Jack felt a sense of calm wash over him. For the first time in a while, he allowed himself to simply be present, to enjoy the moment. They had come so far, and they had done it together. There was no rush. The road ahead was still long, but they didn't need to have everything figured out right away. It was about the journey, about the impact they were making, and the people they were helping along the way. As they walked back to their home, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. He didn't have to have all the answers, and he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. He had found his purpose in helping others, and with Emma by his side, he knew they could continue to make a difference, one step at a time. That night, as they sat down for dinner, Jack shared his thoughts with Emma. "I've been thinking about everything, the work we're doing, the lives we're touching, and I realized that I don't need to do it all alone. We're in this together, and that's enough." Emma smiled at him, her heart full of love. "That's all I've ever wanted, Jack, for us to do this together." Jack reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We're creating something amazing, Emma, and I'm so grateful for you." As they shared a quiet moment together, Jack knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. But with Emma by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges came their way. Together, they were building something that mattered, and that was enough. The future was still uncertain, but one thing was for sure: they would face it together, stronger than ever. The days continued to unfold as Jack and Emma pressed forward with their mission, touching more lives and inspiring others. The journey had not been easy, but every step of the way had been worth it. Jack had learned to trust in the process, to understand that success wasn't always about the grand gestures, but rather the small, consistent actions that had the power to change the world. As they worked together, Emma's presence continued to be his grounding force, the one constant that reminded him of what truly mattered. Yet, there were still moments when Jack found himself doubting. No matter how far they had come, the weight of their responsibility still loomed over him. There were days when he felt like he couldn't do enough, that he was falling short of the expectations others had placed on him. It was in these moments of doubt that Jack found solace in the quiet moments with Emma, where they would sit together, talk, and remind each other of the love and support they shared. One evening, as they sat in their cozy living room, Emma turned to Jack with a soft smile. "You've been quiet tonight," she said, her voice gentle. Jack looked up from the book he had been reading, his brow furrowed as if deep in thought. "I've just been thinking," he said, his voice laced with concern, "about the future, about how much we've done and how much there still is to do." Emma reached out and took his hand in hers, her thumb gently brushing over his knuckles. "Jack, I know it feels overwhelming sometimes, but I need you to remember something," she said softly. "We've already made a huge difference. We've changed lives, and we don't have to do everything at once. It's okay to take things one step at a time." Jack sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I know, but it's hard, Emma. There's so much more I want to do, so many more people I want to help. It just feels like we're always trying to catch up." Emma smiled warmly at him, her eyes full of understanding. "You don't have to do it all, Jack. You've already given so much. And look at what we've built together. Look at the difference we've made. That's what matters." Jack looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. She was right, as always. He didn't have to be everything to everyone. What mattered was the impact they had already made, and the love they had for each other. It was enough. The following weeks were filled with new opportunities and challenges. They expanded their reach even further, providing more resources to communities in need and developing new programs for young people who wanted to make a difference. Jack and Emma continued to work tirelessly, but they also made sure to take time for themselves, time to relax, reflect, and enjoy each other's company. They knew that maintaining their own balance was just as important as the work they were doing. As they settled into this rhythm, Jack found that the doubts that had once consumed him slowly began to fade. He was no longer worried about doing everything or being perfect. Instead, he focused on doing the best he could and trusting that the journey would unfold as it was meant to. One evening, as they sat at dinner, Jack couldn't help but smile at Emma across the table. "You know, I've been thinking about how far we've come," he said, his voice filled with a quiet pride. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Emma. You've been my rock through all of this, and I'm so grateful." Emma smiled back, her heart full. "We've done it together, Jack. And we'll keep doing it, side by side. There's nothing we can't accomplish as long as we're in it together." Jack's eyes sparkled with love as he looked at her. "I never thought I'd be here, in this place, doing this work. But now, I can't imagine anything else." Emma reached across the table and took his hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "You're exactly where you're meant to be, Jack. And so am I." The sense of peace that Jack felt in that moment was unlike any other. He had come to realize that he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. The love and support they had for each other were all that mattered. Together, they were creating something meaningful, something that would last. As the days turned into weeks, Jack and Emma continued to build their foundation. They focused on developing more long-term projects, creating sustainable programs that would continue to support communities long after they were gone. They worked with local businesses, schools, and other organizations, creating a network of support that grew stronger with each passing day. Their impact reached far beyond what they had originally imagined, and Jack felt a deep sense of fulfillment every time they saw the results of their hard work. They weren't just giving handouts, they were empowering people to make a change in their own lives. Jack no longer felt the weight of needing to do everything. He understood that the most important thing was the relationships they were building, the connections they were making, and the lives they were helping to transform. Every small step, every conversation, and every action added up to something much bigger than himself. One afternoon, as they walked through a park near their home, Jack stopped and looked around at the people enjoying the sunshine, the children playing, the families walking together. It was a simple moment, but it filled him with a profound sense of peace. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Jack said softly, his voice filled with awe. Emma nodded, her hand gently resting on his arm. "Yes, we have. And the best part is, we're just getting started." Jack smiled, feeling the weight of his journey lift from his shoulders. With Emma by his side, he knew they could continue making a difference, one step at a time. Together, they had already created something beautiful, and the future was full of even more possibilities. Months passed, and Jack and Emma's lives continued to grow in ways they had never imagined. Their charitable work had expanded beyond the boundaries of their community, reaching cities and towns far and wide. Their efforts had inspired countless others to get involved, to give back, and to create positive change in the world. Yet, despite the overwhelming success of their mission, Jack still found himself wrestling with a feeling of uncertainty. The more their work grew, the more pressure they faced. Jack felt the weight of the responsibility resting on his shoulders, and there were days when he couldn't help but wonder if he was doing enough. One evening, after yet another long day of meetings and planning, Jack sat in the living room, staring out the window as the sun set. Emma was upstairs, taking some time to relax, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. It wasn't that he wasn't happy, he had built something incredible with Emma, and together, they were changing lives. But there was an underlying sense of unease, a feeling that despite all the progress they had made, there was still more to be done, more to give. Jack had always been driven by the desire to do good, but now, he was beginning to wonder if he had taken on too much. He thought about the people they had helped, the communities they had transformed, but he also thought about the people they hadn't reached yet. There were still so many in need. Jack was reminded of the day they first started their work, how uncertain he had been about where the journey would take them. But now, with all they had achieved, Jack couldn't help but feel like the work was far from finished. His mind raced with thoughts of new projects, new programs, and new ways to extend their reach. He wanted to do it all. He wanted to fix everything, to help everyone. But he knew, deep down, that it wasn't possible. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't change the world all at once. He couldn't save everyone. Emma came down the stairs a few minutes later and walked into the living room, sensing something was off. She sat down next to Jack, her hand finding his. "You've been quiet," she said gently. Jack turned to her, a small smile on his face. "I've just been thinking," he said, his voice heavy, "about everything we've done, everything we've accomplished. It's so much bigger than I thought it would be, and I wonder if I'm doing enough. Sometimes I feel like I'm falling short." Emma's heart ached at the words. She could see how much Jack was carrying, how much weight he had placed on his own shoulders. She knew that he wanted to help as many people as possible. But she also knew that the road they had traveled together was more than just about reaching a certain number of people. It was about the quality of their impact, not the quantity. "Jack," she said softly, her voice filled with tenderness. "You've done more than enough. You've given so much of yourself. And we've built something incredible. But you don't have to do it all on your own. We're in this together. And no matter how big it gets, we'll keep going, side by side." Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with emotion. "I just don't want to let anyone down," he admitted. "There's so much more to be done, and I feel like I'm always chasing something that's just out of reach." Emma smiled and squeezed his hand. "You're not letting anyone down. You've already made a huge difference, Jack. And the fact that you care so much, that's what makes you so special. But you don't have to be everything to everyone. We're making an impact, one person at a time. That's what matters." Jack leaned back against the couch, his mind still swirling with thoughts. Emma was right. It wasn't about doing it all. It was about doing what they could, doing the best they could, and trusting that the rest would follow. He had spent so much of his life chasing success and approval, trying to prove himself. But now he realized that he didn't need to prove anything. They had already created something meaningful, something that mattered. And that was enough. In the following weeks, Jack started to take a step back, allowing himself to enjoy the work they had already done. He shifted his focus from constantly striving for more to appreciating the impact they had made so far. They continued to expand their efforts, reaching more communities. But Jack no longer felt the crushing pressure to do it all. He had found a new sense of peace, a calm that came from accepting that their work would never truly be finished. There would always be more to do, more people to help, but that was part of the journey. It was a continuous cycle of giving, learning, and growing. Jack knew that there would be challenges ahead, but now he felt ready to face them with Emma by his side. One day, while they were sitting at the kitchen table, Jack turned to Emma with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking a lot about where we go from here. We've done so much, but there's still so much more we can do. But I don't want to lose sight of what we've already created. I don't want to keep pushing for more without appreciating how far we've come." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I think that's a beautiful thought, Jack. We've come so far and we've already made a huge impact. The future is wide open and we'll continue to build, but we should also take time to celebrate what we've already achieved." Jack nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. It was okay to celebrate the journey, to pause and reflect on the lives they had touched. It wasn't about constantly chasing something bigger. It was about the quality of their work, the depth of their impact, and the people they had helped along the way. As Jack and Emma continued to work together, they knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges. But they were ready. They had built something real, something lasting, and no matter what came next, they would face it together. Jack no longer felt the need to prove anything. He had found peace in knowing that they were doing their best, and that was more than enough. As the seasons changed, so did Jack and Emma's journey. They had come so far from where they had started. Jack had transformed from the man who was consumed by the desire for power and wealth to someone focused on creating real change in the world. Emma had been by his side every step of the way, offering him love, support, and unwavering belief in their mission. Together, they had built something remarkable, but they knew their work was far from finished. They had already made a huge impact, but Jack felt a deep desire to take their work to an even larger scale. With each new initiative they launched, he realized that the hunger to help others never quite went away. There was always more to do, more people to reach, more lives to change. It was both invigorating and overwhelming. But through it all, Emma reminded him of the importance of balance. She constantly reassured him that they didn't have to do everything all at once, that it was okay to take things step by step, as long as they were staying true to their values. One evening, after a particularly exhausting week of planning and hosting events, Jack sat down on the couch, his mind a whirl of thoughts. Emma joined him, sensing his restlessness. "You're quiet tonight," she said, sitting beside him and placing a hand on his. Jack looked at her, his eyes tired but full of emotion. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," he said softly. "We've done so much, but there's still so much more to do. Sometimes, it feels like we're always chasing something, like the work is never really done." Emma smiled gently, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. "I get it, Jack. You're always thinking about how you can do more, how you can help more people. But you know what I've realized? You're already doing so much. We're already making a huge impact. And we don't need to have it all figured out. We'll take it one step at a time." Jack let out a breath, feeling the tension in his chest slowly release. Emma's words always had a way of grounding him, reminding him that they didn't need to do everything all at once. It wasn't about reaching perfection, it was about making a difference, even if it was just for one person at a time. "You're right," Jack said, his voice quieter now. "I guess I just get caught up in trying to do everything. I want to reach as many people as possible, but I forget that the little things matter too, that every step we take is a part of the bigger picture." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, her presence bringing him a sense of calm. "That's exactly it. The little things matter. And we're already making a big difference. Look at all the people we've helped so far, the young people we've inspired to take action. That's what it's all about, changing lives, one step at a time." Jack smiled at her, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't about doing everything or trying to fix the entire world at once. It was about taking the time to help where he could, to make an impact, no matter how small it seemed. As the months went on, Jack continued to find balance in his work. He was no longer constantly striving for something bigger, but rather enjoying the process of helping others. They expanded their mentorship programs, reached more communities, and developed even deeper connections with the people they were helping. With every success, Jack felt a sense of fulfillment that he had never known before. But it wasn't just about the work. It was about the people, those who were now part of their community, those who had been inspired by their story and had taken the initiative to create change in their own lives. The ripple effect of their efforts was something Jack had never fully grasped until now. One day, Jack and Emma were invited to a local high school to speak at a community event. The students had heard about their work and wanted to know more about how they could get involved. When they arrived, they were greeted with enthusiastic applause. As they stood in front of the students, Jack felt a surge of emotion. This was what it was all about, the next generation, eager to make a difference. He began to speak, telling his story, how he had once been lost, searching for meaning in the wrong places, but had found his true purpose in helping others. He spoke of the importance of giving back, of the power of small actions, and how every person had the ability to make a positive impact. The students listened intently, their faces filled with curiosity and determination. After the speech, several students came up to Jack and Emma, eager to ask questions and share their ideas. Jack couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. These young people were the future, and they were already thinking about how they could make a difference. As the event came to a close, one of the students, a young girl named Olivia, approached Jack and Emma. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice full of sincerity. "You've inspired me to take action. I've been thinking about ways I can help my community, and now I know where to start." Jack smiled at her, his heart swelling with emotion. "That's exactly what it's all about," he said. "You've got the power to create change, Olivia. Just take it one step at a time, and you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish." Emma placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "We're so proud of you. And remember, you're not alone in this. We're all in it together." As Jack and Emma left the school, they both felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had come full circle, from a place of uncertainty and struggle, to a place where they were now inspiring the next generation to carry the torch forward. It was a humbling experience, one that reminded them of how far they had come and how much more they could do. They had found their purpose, not just in the work they were doing, but in the people they were helping along the way. With each new step, they were building a legacy that would last long after they were gone, one person at a time. As Jack and Emma continued their work, the weight of their mission began to feel more like a privilege than a burden. They had transformed not only their own lives but also the lives of countless others. Together, they had created a community of change, one where hope, compassion, and purpose thrived. Jack had long since learned to embrace the journey, knowing that the most profound changes came from the small, consistent efforts. He no longer worried about having to do it all. He knew that, with Emma by his side, they could make a difference, no matter how big or small the impact seemed at the time. The months rolled on, and their initiatives expanded to new cities and communities. They received more invitations to speak at events, share their story, and inspire others to take action. Jack and Emma spoke at schools, community centers, and even corporate gatherings, always stressing the importance of empathy, action, and community building. Through their efforts, they were not only changing lives but also inspiring others to do the same. One morning, after a long week of back-to-back meetings, Jack sat by the window, staring out at the landscape. It had been a while since he'd allowed himself a moment of stillness. There had been so much to do, so much to achieve, but now, for the first time in a long while, Jack was able to pause and reflect on everything that had happened. The journey had been long, and it had not been without its challenges. But as he watched the sun rise over the horizon, Jack realized that he had found something much greater than success. He had found meaning. Emma walked into the room, sensing the shift in Jack's mood. "What's on your mind?" she asked, sitting beside him. Jack turned to her, a smile forming on his lips. "I've just been thinking about how far we've come, about everything we've accomplished together, and about how much more we can do." Emma smiled back, her heart full. "We've already done so much, Jack. But you're right, there's always more to do, and we'll keep doing it, together." Jack looked out the window again, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I used to think that success was about achieving big things, about being at the top of the mountain. But now I know that it's about the people we help along the way, the lives we touch, the relationships we build. It's the little things that add up to something bigger than ourselves." Emma nodded, her gaze steady and warm. "Exactly. It's the small moments, the connections we make, and the love we share that create the change. We don't need to do it all at once. We just need to keep moving forward, step by step." Jack felt a sense of peace wash over him. They had built something real, something that had a lasting impact. They had helped so many people, but more importantly, they had empowered others to do the same. He no longer felt the need to chase after success for success's sake. He had already found his purpose in the work they were doing, in the lives they were changing. As the years went by, Jack and Emma's mission grew even stronger. Their foundation reached new heights, and they began to see the fruits of their labor in ways they had never expected. They had built a network of like-minded individuals who were dedicated to creating change, and through their collective efforts, they were making a profound impact in communities all over the country. But even as their work expanded, Jack and Emma never lost sight of what was truly important. They remained focused on the people they were helping, never allowing the pressure of success to overshadow their commitment to their mission. One afternoon, as they sat in their office reviewing their progress, Jack turned to Emma with a thoughtful expression. "You know, I used to think that the more people we reached, the better we'd be doing. But now, I realize it's not just about numbers. It's about the quality of the relationships we build, the connections we make, and the trust we earn. That's where the real impact lies." Emma smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "I couldn't agree more. We've built something truly special, Jack, and the best part is, we're not done yet." Jack nodded, his heart full of gratitude. "No, we're not. But we've created something that will last, something that will continue to grow long after we're gone. And that's all I could ever hope for." As the years passed, Jack and Emma's work became a legacy, not just for them, but for everyone they had touched along the way. They had inspired countless individuals to step up, to make a difference, and to lead with compassion. The ripple effect of their efforts had grown far beyond what they had ever imagined, and Jack felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that their work had created a lasting impact. Their story wasn't just about building a foundation or achieving success. It was about the lives they had touched, the people they had empowered, and the love they had shared along the way. It was about the journey, not the destination. And as Jack and Emma looked out over the world they had helped shape, they knew that they had made a difference. Together, they had created something that would continue to inspire and change lives, one person at a time. And that was the greatest success of all.